Hey, welcome to PCARMARKET Live. My name is David Jacobson, and welcome to episode number 4. Before we introduce our guest, I want to just say to try to get a moment to visit our store. Again, you get your t-shirts, your hats, and all that swag we just put up. And also check out what's on PCARMARKET.com. There's some great auctions ending today and throughout the rest of the week. So I think you're going to have a really good time just browsing through what's on there. So getting right to it, we have one of my favorite guests I've been looking forward to having on here. Most of you know who he is. Listen, he's become a household name in the Porsche world. There's no question. As a race car driver, restorer, a collector, a car museum, a dealer. I don't know what else you could possibly do in any particular field, but more importantly, with a great reputation to boot. So welcome my guest, Bruce Canepa. How are you, Bruce?
Good. How are you?
Very good. You know, the first thing I have to ask you is we have a battle here about pronouncing your name, believe it or not. We have a very, very Italian guy that works here that says it's Canepa and then it's Canepa. We have a little debate. What is the correct way to say it?
So in the family, because there's a lot of Canepas and Canepas, it's whatever they preferred.
Is that right?
It really was, because my dad's relatives, some said Canepa, and depending on what side of the ocean they lived on, they said Canepa and Canepa. So my dad said Canepa, so
no
I
wrong.
was good with that.
No wrong, as long as you're not called late for a nice Italian dinner, right? Then everything's okay.
Exactly.
So, there's so much to talk about, and I wanted to keep it within a palatable amount of time for you. I know you got a lot going on, and there's just so many different areas in which we can focus on. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, which we've been asking a few of our guests recently, is not only how you made it through this last few months, but, a lot of the guys I spoke to that had shops were putting their screws and bolts in place and doing some cleaning. So how did you find the last few months, and how did you use your time the best?
Well, actually, we didn't slow down much. We came home from Amelia Island, and within a day or so, we had locked down the facility to the public, and because that was required in California pretty early on. And then I put all my guys on masks. We've all been wearing masks this whole time and keeping our distancing, and basically requiring the vendors, whether it be UPS or FedEx or vendors bringing parts or whatever, having everybody bring everything to shipping and receiving, even the mailman, nobody coming in the building. And we've been flat out ever since. We haven't skipped a beat. We have enough work, honestly have enough labor to keep busy for almost 2 years just in booked labor.
Wow.
So,
yeah. You know what? Thinking about it, that's probably true for many shops that are busy like yours. It's kind of like a little bit of a breath. So you almost took advantage of this time.
Yeah. Although we didn't get much of a breath, we thought our customers would slow down. A couple of them for a week or so kind of said, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm not sure where we're going. And then within 2 weeks, we were back to full steam and people sending me more cars to do, figuring I don't want to wait any longer. Let's get this car done too. So we've been just completely busy through this whole thing.
Well, that's fantastic. So I want to just keep moving here. One of the things that I heard is that way back, and many people may know this about you, is your first car when you were in college was a Cobra 427. Is that correct?
Well, my first car was when I was 12 years old, and it was a 1929 Model A Ford.
The first one you bought?
The first one I bought. My dad had paid for half of it. It was $400. He paid $200, and I paid $200 when I was 12. And it belonged to the local plumber. It had a wood box in the back of it for all his stuff, and that was my first car. And then, but my first car, it was 1969. I bought a used 427 Cobra. So.
Now come on, what is the chances of that? Now that car is not in your possession anymore. Any idea where it is?
Yeah, I do. I know where it is. And it's funny. That car was $6,000 in 1969, and I put. My dad's banker loaned me part of the money because I needed to save money for college and to live once I was out of high school. And so I put a couple $1,000s down and made payments on the rest. And I had that car for 20 years.
Wow.
And I drove it everywhere. I mean, rain or shine, didn't matter. That was my car. And because those cars, there were no tires back then, I drove it on slicks for 20 years.
It's unbelievable how people really cannot relate that even like a 73 RS at one time went to the grocery stores, right? And
exactly.
They would just put a car seat. If there was a back seat, put a car seat in and so forth. So one of the things I also noticed in again, I know about you and we've met a few times, but one of the things that I love is when I see an interview or you talking about the cars, the life of what you've done, anytime the Porsche word comes up. And there was one in particular I was watching with Mr. McGuire, all right, which where you actually were talking about the Ferraris and all the different makes and models. But when Porsche comes up, your face lights up and you change. What is it about the brand? What is it about? I mean, there's a lot to say there, but what is it particularly that really lights you up?
Well, it's the driving experience. I don't know of another car that gives you that driving experience. There's lots of cars that are fun to drive and do different things. But at the end of the day, you get in a Porsche, and I tell guys I can drive it for 3 hours with no fatigue, have a bite to eat somewhere, and keep going. And there's not many cars do that. And there's not many cars where you really feel like you're one with the car, like you're part of the experience. And Porsche did such a great job with those cars starting in the 50s, obviously. But it doesn't matter. I have a 59 Coupe that's as much fun to drive as anything I have. Of course, it has 210 horsepower, but I mean, what other old cars do you drive that drive more like new cars than old cars? And how many old cars do you get in that go fast in a straight line, turn the corner, stop, handle through all the back roads? I mean, the Porsche is the best car I've ever seen for any of that. And it's comfortable, and it's a fit. It's a perfect fit car for people.
Yeah.
And I'm a driver. I like driving. So I've never found another car that I enjoy driving as much as a Porsche car. So.
Yeah, and there's no secret there. It's just amazing when you get in the car and you feel the connection. It's almost familiar from the moment you get in the car. And I know it's an old conversation that's been happening for many years, how special it is and how you feel comfortable. But one of the experiences that we've had was we took 3 of the cars we built, which were the G program. They were G body cars. We took them 3,000 miles to California. And I am telling you that I could have sat in the car for 12 to 14 hours if we didn't have to take breaks for obvious reasons. And I was completely comfortable with the ride, the noise, the experience. I was never like, let's get out of the car or switch drivers. As a matter of fact, there was about 6 of us, and we were all fighting to stay in the driver's seat for the entire trip. What other car could you do that with?
None. There's lots of cool cars, but I call them 1 hour cars.
Yes.
You're driving for an hour and it's time to get out and go get back in your Porsche. I said, the worst thing in the world is to have a car that's so cool and you drive it for an hour and you want to go home and get your pickup truck.
Yeah.
And so for me, the Porsche is the only car that is, a total experience. I'm actually going to take a day off this week, which I do about once every year. And we're going on a long drive with a bunch of guys, and I'm taking my 911 Hot Rod, my 911E Outlaw car, and because I can drive that car the whole day. I can drive it to where the event is and all day long and back again, and I'll feel fine. I won't feel like I drove 2 hours in that car.
Absolutely. So where are you headed? Is it a secret location?
No, just Northern California. A bunch of guys that have been cooped up, calling everybody together and going for a drive up through all parts of Northern California. So
how did you wind up in Scotts Valley? Of all the places in California, how did you? I was at your shop about 4 years ago, and it's a destination. Obviously, I'd recommend anyone that's anywhere near it is to kind of get there and visit it, because it is an important place in our community to visit. But how did you wind up in Scotts Valley?
Well, I was born in Santa Cruz.
Okay. Oh, you were born in Santa Cruz.
I was born and raised in Santa Cruz, and during the course of my life, I went other places because of events or racing, but Santa Cruz is pretty hard to beat. It's pretty nice here. And, and it's nice. We're 45 minutes from Laguna Seca Racetrack, and we're an hour from San Francisco, a little over an hour. And it's, the weather's unbelievable here. The roads are fantastic. So
you don't have to rub it in. Okay.
Okay, good. You got the picture now?
I get it. No, well, I get it, because we talked about this with a few of our other guests that we're putting trickle charges on, in November, and you're sitting there just starting to enjoy your driving. And when I went to your place, as a matter of fact, I don't know what road it is. I don't know the area that well, but we were sweeping around these beautiful, and it was like high side. It was a highway, with a 2-lane highway with beautiful pavement, and it was sweeping. And I said, all right, this is too good. It's going to end in like 3 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, we're still going. I was absolutely in heaven. So do you still appreciate this?
I do.
Where you get a chance to drive?
Oh God, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get out as much as you can. So I'm going to throw a couple of stats at you and tell me if this makes sense. 2.5 seconds, 0 to 60. 11-second quarter mile, 230 mile an hour top speed, 800 horsepower, and all-wheel drive. And I'm not talking about a P1.
That's right.
Now, I like to pause a second and give everyone a chance to just think about those numbers for a second. And what can I possibly be describing? And just obviously, for those of you that know, Bruce, you created something out of the 959 that really is something that is, and I'm going to go on here for a second on a little bit of a rant because I'm an air-cooled Porsche guy. I've had many different cars, hot rods, factory cars, and there is one that I've never driven. I have a friend that has one here that you built for, an orange one here in New York, and everything about that car it sounds almost too good to be true. How did you accomplish that?
Well, I think Porsche created it first, and all I did was, recreate it, so to speak.
Great point.
When that car came out in '87, I was fortunate enough to have one and drive one. And it was so far ahead of its time, it was hard to imagine. I mean, it really was. Because I had driven other things around that period of time, and there was nothing like it. I mean, and it was obviously it was Helmut Bott and Peter Schutz's attempt to convince Porsche that they needed to continue to build the 911 base car because they were going to stop doing that. And this was really okay. We'll show you what the 911 can be. And so they threw everything at it.
So stop there 1 second because I want to hear, that is such a pivotal moment in Porsche's history. So that was really the time when they were thinking of possibly changing directions, and that car convinced them. Just explain a little bit more about that.
So when Peter Schutz was made president of Porsche, he'd come from Cummins Engine Company, okay, the diesel engine company. And when he came on board at Porsche, there was a decision basically to stop building the air-cooled Porsche. The future was going to be water-cooled front-engine cars. And for all intents and purposes, they were already heading down a road in that direction. That was what they were going to do. And then he thought that was a mistake. Dr. Helmut Bott also thought that was a big mistake. And collectively, they convinced the powers to be that they would, and they were part of the powers, but to go forward and develop a car to prove there was a future for the 911. And without the 959, there may not have been a 911 anymore. And part of that was to take the car and do every level of development they could imagine so they could see how far the 911 would be. And the 959 simply was 20 years ahead of its time when they rolled it out. It was that simple.
Wow. That's really unbelievable. I don't think many people really understand how that decision really was such a major point in the history. So so the 911 at that point could have disappeared. It's that simple.
Could have disappeared.
And who knows where we'd be today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you and just I don't want to leave the 959, the SC. So when I was in not Amelia Island, I think I was in Monterey, and I saw you driving by. Is that a car you drive as a daily driver, or is it something you just take out often? It just passed by one day, and I was like, look at that car, and you were driving it as just hanging out driving it.
8,000 miles in 36 months.
Wow. Okay.
It's a driver.
It's a driver.
And if I had time, I would drive it more. I mean, it's a 911. I tell guys that one thing about a 911 is it's a do everything, go everywhere car. And they always have been from 67 on. I mean, they got good ground clearance. They're comfortable. You can throw luggage in them. You got great visibility. And the 959 is just all of that on steroids. It's still a 911 based car. So, so I use it to go everywhere. I mean, dinners, driving. It's a car. It's not like a modern supercar, because most modern supercars are track cars first and road cars second. And so you compromise the comforts and luxury of a road car with them. Where in the 959 you don't compromise any comfort or luxury, and yet you got a car that goes as fast as you want to go. I mean, and the only spec you had wrong is we're actually the quarter mile an hour in the high 9s and low 10s.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, we're even quicker. So, but and the point was not to try and build the fastest car in the world, although I never have enough power or enough speed, but to build a car that was really exciting from 0 to 125 miles an hour. And because that's really all you can do. I mean, you want a car that's accelerates like crazy, has grip, goes, turns left and right, goes through the corners, and it does all those things. And so that's what makes it fun to drive. And it's not heavy. Compared to a lot of big GT cars today, they've gotten much larger and bigger. It's still the size of a normal 911 footprint. It weighs 3,000 pounds, turnkey, ready to go. So it's a fun car. It really defines fun.
I think it's one of those lightning in a bottle situations where the right guy, the right product at the right time, right? It's really what it is. It was just the opportunity presented itself, and not everyone could have taken that car and created what you've created. So fantastic. And I look forward to getting behind the wheel of one day. Maybe when I come out there, I can look you up and come by your place and take a ride.
You can do that anytime.
Okay. I love that.
Absolutely.
So what's the current, is it possible to buy one at this point? I mean, is there a waiting list of how many years, or what's the status with that?
So in the basically the SC or the reimagined version, we're not going to build more than 50. We're not sure we'll find enough donors to build 50. There's really, of the production cars, although there's like 300 cars, there's about 250 that are regular production 959s were built in the world. So, and then we narrow it down to kind of the better quality ones. We don't want to start with a bad car. We want to start with a really, really good donor. So, because I mean, it's a difference of spending for a donor $1 million versus $1.2 million. So you're not going to shortcut the donor. You buy the best donor. Yeah. And that's the struggle. I mean, we just found 4 cars, and we've already sold 3 of the 4. And every time we find cars, they're pretty much sold out. And,
so there's a slot available. I just heard you say there's a slot available.
There's a slot available right now. Yeah.
Well, that's actually, yeah.
And we're chasing these cars all over the world, basically. The one we just bought is interesting. It's a 1,400 kilometer car, but it's sat since 1988. Nissan had it. They bought it so that they could really look and see what Porsche was doing with their all-wheel drive system. Really? And it was owned by Nissan. They couldn't buy it themselves. They had an engineer buy it. They owned it, and then they kept it till they were done with it. And then one of their retired engineers then bought it and had it ever since, and it just sat in the garage. So it needs everything, but it's all original. And we like those kind of cars to do the SC version. So
yeah, and it's kind of different than most of the reimagined or hot rodded cars, where you're looking for ones that don't have matching motors normally, or something that is on the borderline of being trashed. You actually are looking for really high quality cars to do what you're doing. So it's a different philosophy for obvious reasons. So just to go into the racing a little bit, you've raced many machines in the sprint cars, modified, even a tractor hill climb, which I thought was awesome. But what is, out of all the racing, what gives you the biggest thrill of all these years? What would you say is your biggest thrill?
Well, there's no question the most fun I ever had racing was in sprint cars.
Okay.
So, and if you've ever seen sprint cars race, it's pretty easy to understand. You've got a 1,200-pound car, 850 horsepower on wet dirt sideways, and they really are the most fun. They also teach you an incredible amount of driving skill, because you do everything with the throttle. You basically steer and control that car with throttle, and you're never straight hardly in the car. The brakes, you only have brakes on the left front wheel and on one rear. Brakes don't really stop it. Brakes are just used to kind of give it attitude. And if you learn to drive that car, I said you can probably drive anything. And of course, that really crosses over into Porsches with throttle oversteer. So for me, the Porsche was a natural evolution from a dirt car to go drive or race. And I drive Porsches pretty sideways, so it makes it fun.
Well, sideways is the fun ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's one of the only times I was telling Michael Strahan this when he was on a couple weeks ago, that for me, being on a boat or being on a track is kind of the same thing, where I lose every other issue that's going on in my life, and I can just really enjoy myself. You find that same thing? It's like euphoria, right?
Exactly. Well, and I can shut out everything else when I do it.
Yeah.
Go.
Go.
The sprint car is the reason that I liked racing the Porsches, because a 935 is a very short wheelbase race car with a big engine hanging out the back. And the only way you go fast in those cars is with oversteer all the time.
Yeah.
And the guys that were comfortable being, I call loose all the time, were the guys that went fastest in those cars and still do.
Right, right. You know, that's a perfect segue because one of my favorite cars is your Interscope 935. That black one. Is that your car?
No, that's actually Tim Pappas's car.
I have a bucket list, and that car is on it. I don't know why, but that car is absolutely gorgeous to look at. I can just dream of being behind the wheel in that car. Now, is that a car you raced? Does he race the car currently?
He races the car. He does historic races with the car, yeah.
Oh, that's
and,
beautiful.
Yeah, Interscope cars were beautiful. That color combination of theirs with their stripes was unbelievable.
It really is. It's very striking, and you know, there's all crazy, you know, color combinations and designs, but there's something about that car that just kind of nails me, and I love that car. So who is your racing influence? Who does Bruce Canepa look back at and say, this is a guy that I actually, you know, admired as a race car driver?
Well, it really started I started on dirt tracks in jalopies and then sportsmen. Before I got to super modifieds or sprint cars, I started at the very lowest end on a little quarter-mile dirt track down here in the middle of the farm fields in Watsonville. So, you know, my heroes, and I think I went to Indianapolis first time when I was 14, I think, and then really went after that every year almost till, other than a few years, I've gone almost every year. So my heroes were guys like A.J. Foyt and Parnelli Jones and Mario Andretti. And part of the reason is because they drive anything. Didn't matter what they got. And they drove midgets and sprint cars and modifieds and stock cars and Indy cars and, you know, sports cars. It really made no difference. They could just jump from car to car to car. And that's, you know, I never raced full time like it was going to be my job. I raced for fun. And so I raced everything. It didn't matter. If a guy said, you want to drive my car, you know, I was already in the seat. And it's just the way it's been. So, you know, those guys did that full time, you know, back when racing's different today. Guys are a single driver in a single, you know, series. You know, they're either a NASCAR driver, they're an IndyCar driver. But in the old days, those guys grew up driving stuff 3 and 4 times a week in every kind of car you can imagine. So it started with that.
I guess
it moved over.
Yeah, I guess you need to be a specialist this day, right? That's where the money is. The money is always in being a specialist, being the best at one thing, you know, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's changed, which is unfortunate in a lot of ways. I'd love to see guys like Scott Dixon in stock cars and guys like, you know, Jimmy Johnson in an Indy car and vice versa and in sports cars. And those guys would like to too. It's just not, it's changed as a sport. It's gotten such a business that they're just dedicated to one thing to do, to be able to win. It's hard to do everything. So
no doubt. And it's sad, but it is the world we're living in right now. So if you describe the feeling, I know this is probably easy for you, but also difficult at the same time. A 935 and 917, what is the feeling going flat out in those cars? What is that feeling? Just because, you know, everyone watches these videos when you're at Rennsport, you know, the vintage racing, and what is that feeling being behind the wheel of a classic vintage Porsche like that?
Well, and you know, I raced 935s when they were new, so that car goes back for me to 1979. 1978 is the first time I drove those cars, and they're still, to me, as exciting and as much fun and as challenging as they were then, because they're a driver's car. They're a lot of work. I said you got to use both arms, both legs, and your brain to full capacity just to keep that thing under control. And if you look at a place like Monterey and you say, okay, so I can go out and do a minute 27 lap in a 935, that's not much slower than a modern GT car goes.
Right.
They were extremely fast in the day. You know, they developed almost 800 horsepower, and they had a lot of aero, a lot of wing on them. So they're really, but it's different than today's car, because today's cars have so many electronic aids that the driver kind of drives what I call almost a perfect line and goes fast. Where in a 935, you drive a lot of different lines and you're not straight very often to go fast. A very different approach. But that's what makes it more enjoyable and more surreal, just more fun, no? Well, it's all the driver. Yeah. I mean, you have the car, but the driver has to drive it. There's no help anywhere. Yeah. There's no ABS. There's no traction control. There's no power steering. You know, it's a manual clutch with a synchromesh transmission in it. And you know, the 935 started from the 930 street car. I mean, it was the road car made into a race car. So, yeah, that's incredible. So it's pretty raw. Yeah. The 917 is a different thing. I never drove those in the day. That was before me. and because that was 70 basically 1970 era, but it's an amazing piece of equipment. It's another typical of Porsche. It was so far ahead of its time. You look at the car, and and as you know, we've had 7 of them we've restored here, and including the Mark Donahue Can-Am Championship car, the Fulmer Championship car from Can-Am, several of the Gulf cars. We've done a number of these cars in our shop now, and you go out and every time I get in one and drive it, and I have one that I race. Well, I have a couple. I have a Can-Am car and the other. Every time you get in it, you're just amazed that this is a car that was built in 1970. It has grip. It turns. It stops. It does everything so well. It's hard to imagine it. It is not a scary car to drive. I mean, maybe for some guys, I don't know, but it doesn't feel like a scary car to drive. It feels very comfortable. And it works really well. I said the proof is its history. There were hardly any 917s ever wrecked. And I said, they went so fast, and there were hardly any crashed. And you couldn't afford to crash them. I don't know if you know this, but the frame on one, when they're disassembled, the frame only weighs 100 pounds.
That's incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah, 98 pounds on the last one we did, and they seem to average between 98 and 103 or 4 pounds. The frame is aluminum tubing. It's 90 wall. It's metric, but it's they come in same as 90 wall tubing, and
a lot of magnesium as well. No.
Oh yeah, everything else is magnesium and titanium in the car. But so there's no structure there. I call it a motorized lawn chair, but because there's nothing there. If you crash, you're in big trouble.
Well, but isn't the motor part of the stress? It's a stress member. It's part of the build of the engine's part of the car. It's built.
No, not in that car.
Oh, no, it's not.
It is in a 956 or 962.
Okay.
But in the 917, the engine's bolted in a tube frame. Oh,
okay. Right.
And the car, after 1 or 2 events, you have to go weld up the cracks. They crack all over the place, the frames. That's part of it. So
that's it's a little more comforting though, right? To know it's bolted in. I mean, it'll feel a little safer in a car like that. I mean, because you really don't know. In the 962, you really don't know where the fatigue is and how much is left.
Now, 962 is a pretty safe car. It's got a safe tub, but the 917 was not a safe car. Your feet are in front of the front wheels. There's nothing out there but a couple of pieces of aluminum. So,
well, safety's it's all part of your mind anyway, right?
Exactly. Everything we ever drove at that time in period we thought was safe. So it didn't matter.
As long as it was better than the one before it, it was safer. That's all you had to worry about. So, what's your go-to car? I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's an amazing car to drive, the 917. I mean, everybody that has one, they do everything so well, even by today's standards. It's just, it was, and today's cars are more little more difficult for the car builders to build because the rules have changed how they build them. The driver has to be set way back, and the car's got to have some crash worthiness by design, and the engines are smaller, so they don't have as much horsepower, and the tires are not as big as they were back then. 917 ran a 19 or 20 inch wide tire in the rear back in the day.
Wow.
And so, today's top cars are regulated for safety, and they're trying to slow them down so they're not as much fun to drive. They're a different car to drive.
Yeah, it's hard to keep that excitement when you're focusing on safety and that's. But what is your go-to car at Laguna Seca? I mean, is it a 917, or if you put that aside, I don't care what it is. What are you grabbing the keys to?
935.
935, because you could toss it around. It's like part of you. It just feels like it's. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of toss everything around I drive, but the 935, yes, I drive that car as hard as I've ever driven it, and I'm not 30 years old anymore, so it's an amazing piece to drive. It makes you smile inside your helmet every time you drive, and it also makes you feel accomplished because. Derek Bell made a comment years ago, and he said every time he got in a 935, he thought it was trying to kill him, and that's how you feel some days in that car.
Is that right?
So, they're a handful. They're a serious handful.
They are something else to look at too. It's funny when Rod was on here a few weeks ago, he was talking about how that car was a major inspiration for him in doing the RSR. His RSR build, for the, he was talking about flames thrown out of the back with the ducts in the back of the back of the rear tires. It was just such a statement, that car, that really was it's unforgettable.
What is? Well, you walk up to it today, and it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine that car was built in the late 70s.
Yeah, incredible.
It's got a presence that not many cars have.
Yeah, kudos to Porsche for constantly doing stuff like that. So, what does the Peterson Museum mean to you? I know that you're good friends with Bruce Meyer, I know, who plays a big role over there. In fact, every time I see you, you're with Bruce in California. Every time I see you guys, and is the Peterson Museum as important to you as it is to him? And what's your involvement there?
We've done a bunch of stuff with the Peterson over the years, as you know. We've loaned cars like the Porsche display. We had cars, and we did a restoration of a Can-Am car for them. But the Peterson is amazing because, first of all, Southern California is such a center point in the world of car development stuff. Hot rodders, drag racers, Bonneville designers. It is the center spot for everything that's happened, or a lot of things have happened in automotive stuff. And the Peterson keeps it alive. And otherwise, if you think about people, even people that grew up in that era, a lot of them didn't know about all that stuff going on, or the players. When you look at the different people that built cars, I mean, Southern California has a ton of them, that built them from, you go back to Dan Gurney and Curtis and all these different guys, the cam guys. They had Pink, the engine guys. I mean, the racers. I mean, it's just can't even remember them all. There's so many, and so the Peterson has really, it's an amazing place because it just keeps waking you up to everything automotive that's happened over the last 120 years, and it'd be terrible to forget all those things because the car has been such a big part of this world in our life. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, and they do such a beautiful, I don't care if you're into a certain mark or not, when you see the way they display it, what a beautiful job. It is such a special place. And every time I'm in, that area, I try to make a point to get there and see what's going on.
Yeah, and it's always different.
It's always different.
Yeah. And it's always exciting. I mean, whether they got a whole group of customs in there and lowriders, or whether it's movie cars, or, it doesn't matter what it is, race cars, it's never boring to go there. And that's pretty rare for a museum.
Yeah, no doubt. So just a couple more questions, and I'm going to do the 10 questions with you because this is how people are going to get to know more about you than probably they do watching any of the videos. Nothing crazy, I promise you. It'll be all safe. But just one thing I want to ask you about electric vehicles. I know you're always, tinkering and changing and modifying. And I heard in one of the interviews that you said that when your dad gave you a car, the first thing you do is modify it. That's one of the things that you like to do. So what's your take on electric cars? And is there anything you want to announce today? Are you working on anything electric? Anything? Are you integrating the thought of it into your process in the future, you think?
I don't know. I've got so many things I want to finish yet that we're doing. And, before I get to electric, no, I'm not there yet. I am involved with a company, Draco. We did a lot of stuff with Draco with their electric car. We worked with them on that car. Yeah. And there's no question, it's extremely amazing what an electric car does. And that car makes 1,200 horsepower.
Wow.
That car. And it's so fast and so quiet. And of course, with the center of gravity just off the ground, the handling and stuff, despite the weight, is pretty amazing. We went around Laguna Seca with it, and it's really quick. It does everything really well. And I've driven a Tesla, and look, those cars are impressive, all of them. I'm not there yet. I still like cars that you pour gasoline in,
Yeah.
And I love new cars. I have a lot of different new cars that I have too, but I always go back to older cars, and maybe I'm just getting old, but I'm doing a Volkswagen bus, and the whole chassis is Porsche turbo in it.
Wow.
And it'll be a twin turbo. Well, it's 1960 Volkswagen bus.
Oh my goodness. And, what is that? How much does that weigh? What's up?
I think it'll weigh 2,800 pounds or something.
Goodness.
That's it.
With everything?
And with everything.
Motor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my 356 has, 911 rear suspension and 908 disc brakes and a 2.5 liter. I used the Polo case, and Ed Pink Sr., we built a motor that makes 210 horsepower. And, I have a 911E, but it's 300 horsepower. So I still like those kind of cars. it'll be a while before I convert to electric, if I do at all. I mean, I do like the fact that if I want to be, comfortable and quiet, it does all those things.
Exactly.
It's a different world. It really is a different world in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place for them. And I think what I'm looking forward to is when they get to where batteries will give you more distance. Because if I had a Taycan, I want to drive it to LA and
100%
nonstop.
How far is it? How far is that trip?
And it's 360 miles, 370 miles. So, when they get that and they get the batteries lighter so that the cars get lighter, then I think that I'll be convinced that electric is the new generation.
So you're going to stay combustion for now.
I am. I'm going to stay combustion for now.
Duly noted. And just before we get to those quick questions, anything you're building right now that's something you're really excited about? I mean, listen, you got to be excited about everything you're building, and I get that. But is there a standout of something that's really exciting for you right now?
I don't think there's any one thing we have too many projects going on now.
Right. Okay.
On average, there's 50 to 60 projects in the shop.
Oh, wow.
And I get excited about all of them. And we're building a 356 Outlaw car right now from a 64 coupe. That's going to be stunning. We're doing a bunch of cool things, and it's going to be a 175 horsepower car, but we're doing that car. And then we're doing, we're doing 4 959s right now in production. 4 more of the SCs are in production. And I really enjoy those cars because one of the things we're doing with those cars is there's no silver ones leaving the shop. We just did one in a version of Irish green, and we did one in granite, and we did another one in white, but with a different gray-green leather. We're doing one in signal yellow. I love those cars in colors. You saw Rich's car in tangerine.
Oh my goodness.
It changes the whole car to put color on the car.
Absolutely.
Because 90% of them were silver, and then there was some red ones and some white ones, but they were almost all silver.
See, it's funny. Silver is my favorite car color for whatever reason. Silver with the red. I like that vintagey Porsche, but Rich's car with that orange is the most. I even got upset with him. I said, if I was going to do one, you stole my color. Because is it true you won't do it again, right? You only do one?
I only do one, yeah.
All right.
That's right.
And that's, I think, listen, the owners of these cars have to appreciate that.
Yeah. And, we did that Viper green car, and that car has drawn more attention than anything we've done. And everybody was, nervous, is Viper green going to work on a 959? And it looks like it was made for a 959.
Why would anybody even question that?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's hard to imagine doing those things to those cars, because everybody's used to seeing them in silver. That's all.
I guess. But there's been so many, Porsche even has done so many crazy colors over the years that you can kind of wrap your head around. I mean, you look at the signal greens, the greens and the yellows and the magentas. I mean, I have a 74 Euro Carrera with this magenta color that no one believes that it was an actual factory color. And it's as pink as you can possibly get.
Well, and that's the cool thing. Porsches paint to sample colors, and all the colors they've used over the years, they got amazing colors.
They really do. How do they do that, Bruce? How do they do that? How do they take a ruby stone? How do they take the 964 Maritime Blue? How do they make the perfect blend of a specific hue? It blows my mind.
Somebody works at it, because we do it here all the time. I've made a handful of colors for Ford GTs, for executives at Ford, and for other people. We helped Roger Penske. His car is Sunoco blue with yellow stripes, and then my car is a special color. I made a green for my Ford GT, and we just sit back there and we play with colors. We mix formulas and do test samples and samples and sample. I mean, on my Ford GT, we did no less than 40 paint samples before I said that's it.
I am not surprised.
I believe Porsche did the same thing. Somebody in the paint shop back then was sitting there just playing with colors all the time.
I don't know if anyone really appreciates what it really takes to get that color, because you can be off by a hair and go from absolutely stunning to right?
Exactly.
It's incredible. It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the questions, because I could talk to you all day. We have a lot to talk about. And I'm going to throw just 2 choices at you. If you just first thing that comes to your mind. And this just helps people get to know a little bit more about you, Bruce. And the first question I already asked you this. Actually, I was too early. Go-to car at Laguna Seca, you said in the 935. So we'll take a pass on that one. So F1 or Indy? Which one?
For me, it's Indy.
Indy. Ready? We're going to music. Country or rock and roll?
Country.
Country. Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit country.
I turn on the radio. My 959, I could be going 130 mile an hour, and I've got the country music turned up.
That's great. That's one of those moments, right?
That's my relaxation.
Absolutely. Your favorite car color?
Blue.
Blue. Okay. Your daily driver, not just your car you pull out of the garage to go to the grocery store.
I don't have a daily driver. In my business, every night I'm in a different car. Part of what we do, because I'm a detail freak, so every car is tested and tested and tested. And before we deliver cars, the reason we've built a reputation is because we pay attention to details.
Sure.
And so every night when the guys say this car is ready, I'm the guy that drives it to determine if it's ready.
Okay.
So I'm in different things every night. It could be, last night it was a Carrera RS 73. And the night before it was a 65 Porsche convertible. Actually, it was Bruce Meyer's car that we just resold to somebody. And I'm just in a different car all the time.
Poor guy. Too bad for you. All right. So we'll call that all different cars. Food, Mexican or Thai?
Mexican.
Vacation, would you go to a European city or a tropical island?
Where's the racetrack?
There is none. It's the day you have to give up racing for one day. Do you go to European city or do you go to the tropical island?
European city.
Okay. And turbo or naturally aspirated, if you had to choose one?
Can't choose one.
Come on. Just choose one. I got to push you on this one. Naturally aspirated. If there's one car, just one engine, is it normally aspirated or turbo?
Turbo.
And sports, baseball or football?
Football.
Okay, all right. Now, let me tell you, how many times have you been asked these questions?
I don't think I've been asked
There you
questions.
go. So everyone wants to know a little bit more about you, and thanks for being a good sport. And Bruce, thanks for taking the time to spend with me. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I know that Canepa Motorsports is a great place, a great destination, a great place to buy, a great place to visit. And you following you in all your different, exciting things that you do is also another great thing that I recommend for people to do. So, Bruce, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Thanks, Bruce. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you all for checking us out today at Car Market, episode 4. We'll see you soon. Thank you.